Welcome back to another FPL video and podcast. This will be the transfer tips for Game Week 19, and there's an extremely short turnaround for the next deadline. There will be the deadline stream, of course, on the 29th of December. Keep your eyes peeled on this channel, and the aim is to release the best wildcard team and also the team selection. But in this video, I'll be discussing 11 players to buy, hold, sell, and skip. If there are any other picks that you want discussed, leave them in the comment section down below, and I may cover them in future editions. Just bear in mind that some of these players may have been covered already in previous transfer tips podcasts. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. If you enjoy my content, our aim is to get this to the 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards 31,000 subscribers and beyond. Check all the links in the description below for my Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM. You can also find me on Blue Sky by tapping FPL Dylan, and there's the Discord server, FPL League, Draft Hound, as well as Spotify. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. The first purchase I'm going to recommend is Anthony Gordon, who I haven't been too impressed by at the beginning of this campaign. I started Game Week 1 with him and he was very frustrating for me. Now, last season he showed real consistency and he would get goals or assists in virtually every single game at St James's Park. The away form was the only concern, but I have to say in recent weeks he's kind of shown those levels of consistency and FPL output as he did last year, and that's very encouraging. When you're ranking the Newcastle assets, I think Isak is comfortably top. Lewis Hall is arguably second, but Gordon would definitely complete a Newcastle triple up. And with Bruno Fernandes suspended for Game Week 19 and also facing Liverpool shortly afterwards, I think Anthony Gordon could be one of the best replacements for him and also Bukayo Saka. But I'd still be a bit careful with this pick because I still think Newcastle can be prone to inconsistency. But if they carry on this trajectory, I think they're looking very strong. And as long as Gordon doesn't play on the right, as we saw towards the beginning of this season, I think he should be good to go with this particular pick. He scored against Man United last season, and actually he did it in the Carabao Cup too. So he's got a decent record at Old Trafford, and Tottenham away isn't a bad fixture for attackers, as we saw with the Liverpool game a couple of weeks ago. Then Wolves and Bournemouth at home, not bad fixtures in my opinion, and Anthony Gordon got a double-digit haul at the Vitality Stadium earlier in this campaign, so he can do something against an informed Bournemouth side too. 4 goals and 4 assists, with most of them coming in recent weeks, 38 key passes and 77 FPL points. He got a double-digit haul against Aston Villa with a fantastic strike to give Newcastle the lead, and his ownership is still relatively low at around 10%, and it's only rising from now until the deadline. Other underlying stats include an XG figure of 5.63 and 10 big chances. Nothing amazing, but still solid numbers for a mid-price midfielder. I think Anthony Gordon is worth considering. If you're looking for a send-forget goalkeeper until the end of the season, I think Jordan Pickford fits the bill perfectly. He made a penalty save against Erling Haaland in Game Week 18 to make it 2 penalty saves throughout the entire campaign and 7 clean sheets. Everton are looking so solid, and despite this terrible fixture run that the Toffees have been on, they kept the clean sheet against Arsenal at the Emirates. They also kept the clean sheet against Chelsea, 2 informed sides, and then Manchester City, they obviously kept them pegged back. They went 1-0 down and still found a way to get a result. I think Everton are one of the best defences in the Premier League. They're right up there with Nottingham Forest, Liverpool and Arsenal. I think those 4 have the best in that area. And Jordan Pickford is one of the best goalkeepers in the game. Arguably even number 1 with 82 FPL points, more than any other goalkeeper. He costs 4.9 million and the next 4 fixtures are quite mixed bag, but Everton can keep a clean sheet against anybody on their day. Even against their fiercest rivals Liverpool, with that game still yet to be scheduled. We'll likely get a double game week in 24 or 25, and I don't mind having Jordan Pickford for that particular game week, but let's see what happens over the coming month or so. He's made 49 saves, and I just think the stats across the board are very encouraging. His ownership is still quite low for a goalkeeper. When you're actually looking to buy a player in this position, I think Raya, Sanchez, Sells, and Pickford make up the 4 best in the game. The likes of Alisson and Onana are also decent, and you'll find good value elsewhere, but I think Jordan Pickford is arguably the best FPL goalkeeper until the end of the season. Everton's opponents in Game Week 19 are Nottingham Forest, and they're also worth investment defensively. I think Aina is probably the best option, period, but you've also got Sells in goal and Milenkovic. I think it's a very close call between those 3. Then you're looking at Murillo, who's probably the 4th best option, and then Nico Williams / Alex Moreno in 5th. I'd probably avoid that position because that's the most prone to rotation, and I think Aina is nailed on. He can play on both flanks, but he's mainly playing on the right-hand side, and you could definitely make a case for him being the best right-back in this season's Premier League. He's got 2 goals this season and no assists, but only 2 shots on target. I don't think that's sustainable, but what you're going to get from Aina are clean sheets, bonus points, and I think you'll add an assist or 2. From now until the very end of the campaign, his ownership is only rising, and you look at the next 2 fixtures in particular, they look quite promising, but Wolves do have that manager bounce, and Everton are in great form themselves. Southampton at home looks kind of locked in for a clean sheet, but maybe Nottingham Forest will perform better against the better teams in the country, and Liverpool, of course, are on the horizon. Nottingham Forest went there earlier this season and got a clean sheet at Anfield, something that no other team could really do, and Liverpool haven't lost since then. So you've got to give Nottingham Forest extreme credit. They sit 3rd in the Premier League table as things stand, and we'll see how Arsenal get on later tonight. But I think Aina is worth 5 million, and if you've got a lot of money to spread around, I think it's probably worth going for Aina and spending the extra millions over Milenkovic or Murillo. But I have to say, I certainly wouldn't mind the Serbian centre-back. Milenkovic has goal threat from set pieces, and he also offers tremendous value. But ultimately, Nottingham Forest are a really good team, and you should have 1 or 2 players in your FPL squads. Ever since he was benched against Southampton a couple of weeks ago, Nicholas Jackson has been quiet in FPL. The underlying stats remain tremendous, and he's got good output for this point of the season, but 9 goals and 4 assists, he hasn't really added to those numbers ever since Chelsea's fixture swing, where they drew to Everton in a goalless draw and lost to Fulham in the dying embers of that game. So Chelsea have been disappointing recently, but they are still one of the top scorers in this division. They create multiple chances, and Jackson is the main beneficiary. Will there be a chance of Nkuku starting a match over Jackson anytime soon? I think that's definitely on the cards, but I think it's worth holding on to Jackson. I'm not sure if I'd buy him in at this point in time, but Ipswich Town is a great fixture. If Chelsea can get their act together in matches like this, they could score 3 or 4 goals, and Jackson will likely be heavily involved. But I've always said Cole Palmer is by far the best Chelsea asset. Jackson will be second for me, and then Robert Sanchez in third. But given their current form, I don't think you need to triple up on the Blues, but that could certainly change because they've still got those appealing fixtures on the horizon. Jackson has 93 FPL points, which is only bettered by Chris Wood, Cunha, Isak and Erling Haaland, and I could see him catapulting to the top of the rankings fairly soon. Maybe not above Isak, but above the others. I think Jackson could certainly do that. It all depends on the minutes, and can Chelsea bounce back from the recent disappointments? The pressure is off them, in my opinion. I don't think there is serious expectation of them lifting the Premier League title, and they've already exceeded expectations up until this point of the campaign. So I think Jackson is worth holding, but if it's a question of buying a striker right now, I think Alexander Isak is a level above. Replacements for Bruno Fernandes and Bukayo Saka will be very popular this week, but I wouldn't buy Jarrod Bowen in Gameweek 19. I think it's probably worth holding on to him for now, and if you really want to buy him, I think Gameweek 20 would provide a better opportunity when Jarrod Bowen faces an off-form Manchester City side. Then you've got back-to-back London derbies at home against Fulham and Crystal Palace. Bowen has 5 goals and 6 assists this season, and he scored the only goal against Southampton in Gameweek 18. Low ownership at around 7.4% and an accessible price tag at 7.5 million. He offers a more nailed-on option than Diaz or Diogo Jota, who would be my preferences to replace Saka or Bruno Fernandes, but their minutes will be shared as we saw against Leicester City. But Bowen has an XGI figure of 8.66, which is very encouraging, and 89 FPL points. My main issue with Bowen is the lack of bonus points. So he is a talismanic figure for West Ham in terms of getting most of their goals and being very heavily involved in everything they do offensively. But when you look at the bonus points, I think the likes of Areola or Fabianski in goal would be more likely than Bowen if West Ham kept a clean sheet, and that's a big issue for me. But he is still a mid-priced midfielder after all, and if he offers consistency of 5 to 8 pointers on a regular basis, I think he's worth investment, but I think a better time to do that would be Gameweek 20. Chris Wood has blanked in 3 successive games, and Nottingham Forest have still found a way to get some positive results against Aston Villa and also Tottenham Hotspur, but I do like Chris Wood in the long term, and when I'm building a wildcard team, he would still make it in my opinion, but you could definitely argue that Jackson, Isak and also Cunha are the best 3 forwards in the game right now based on form, fixtures and also the value they offer. But I wouldn't invest in Cunha right now because the ban is imminent in my opinion. It wouldn't surprise me if after the Tottenham game, so when we approach the new year, we will see Cunha suspended for several Premier League matches. So I don't think it's worth investing in him right now. Once that ban is kind of out of the question and Cunha's available, he's a long-term hold, and I've always said that. But Chris Wood is also a very logical choice. He's very consistent and he'll get some decent returns over the next month or two. His ownership is still quite high. It's actually the exact same as the last time I covered him in a Transtips video. He's got 10 goals, 14 big chances, and 94 FPL points. The recent weeks have been disappointing, and you've seen Elanga scoring 3 successive games. Gibbs White is getting assists, and I think Nottingham Forest have a very solid team, and the goals can come from anywhere. But Chris Wood will get the bulk of the chances, and he's still their top scorer by some distance, and he'll compete with the likes of Jackson, Cunha, Haaland, and Isak. FPL managers who started Fabianski in Gameweek 18 were very unfortunate when the Polish international was subbed off around 36 minutes due to a head injury. But the recent comments by Lopetegui are very encouraging, and I would only sell Fabianski if you've got no other choice in goal and you need a set and forget option until the end of the season, because there's still a chance that Fabianski misses Gameweek 19. But Lopetegui said the following after their 1-0 win against Southampton. Fabianski had one big knock around the head, around the neck, and he was not very sure about his actions. Fortunately, the news is he's talking, he is alert, he is conscious. I talked with him, the doctors say that he feels better and well. I am positive with him. He showed he more or less recovered his sense. I am not afraid. We feared, but now he is better, and it is a positive feeling because we were very worried. So very, very good news on Fabianski. And as a backup goalkeeper, I still rank him higher than Forster and all these other options like Dubravka, who has been keeping clean sheet after clean sheet, to be fair. But he's a very short-term option with Nick Pope coming back fairly soon, around the next month or so, maybe even sooner. So I think Fabianski remains the best option between the sticks, and I think those that invested were very unlucky not to keep a clean sheet there against Southampton. He was probably on course for a massive return. He's kept 2 clean sheets this season with 40 saves, 16 goals conceded, and 33 FPL points. Amongst backup goalkeepers, you're not going to find better value than Lucas Fabianski. Only short-term through Martin Dubravka, but I don't think it's worth investing in that sort of pick. I would just go for a set and forget option like Pickford, Raya, Sanchez, or Sells between the sticks. Bruno Fernandes picked up his 3rd red card of the season across all competitions, and that's another -2 pointer in FPL. You could definitely make a case for keeping him, and it's all team dependent. If you've got a decent 5th midfielder, 3 solid forwards, or maybe a 4th good defender, that could be even Daniel Munoz, for example, then you could bench Bruno Fernandes. But I just look at it and think an 8.4 million midfielder who's suspended for the next game, then he's benchable against Liverpool away. You could definitely make a case for selling him to an Anthony Gordon, Ismail Assar, one of Diaz or Jota. But then again, on the flip side, are there any standout replacements apart from Palmer or Salah? And the answer is probably not. But you can find better value elsewhere. That's definitely for sure. The reason why I bought Bruno Fernandes in the end was because he's kind of a set and forget option. That was my kind of thinking about him. On penalties, bonus points machine, great underlying stats, good fixtures overall. So I think Bruno Fernandes made sense as a Saka replacement. I didn't see any particular standout, but Bruno Fernandes was slightly ahead of the rest in the long term. So this could definitely be turned into a hold, and I'll decide what I do with Bruno Fernandes in the next few days, and you'll see what I come up with in the team selection and deadline stream very soon. But at the moment, I'm leaning towards selling Bruno Fernandes because he's way too expensive to just keep on the bench for the next 2 game weeks, arguably. I never wanted to start him against Liverpool away, but I could certainly see the case and the other side of the argument to keep him Bruno Fernandes and then starting him in fixtures like Southampton and Brighton at home. He's got a great record against both clubs, so it might be a case of short-term pain and long-term gain by keeping Bruno Fernandes. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Only a couple of weeks ago, I discussed holding Jamie Vardy because for a budget striker, he offers good value. He was in form, and you had Leicester City having a manager bounce against West Ham. He had Wolves at home coming up, but the injury picked up recently has certainly pushed him down in my estimation. And you look at the upcoming fixtures, and they are pretty terrible. Now, if Jamie Vardy is available for Man City at home, he could definitely do something in such a fixture. Then Aston Villa away, Crystal Palace at home, and Fulham at home. They're not the worst fixtures, but I do think Jamie Vardy and Leicester City will struggle with their current form. They put in a decent first half against Liverpool, but then quality ended up showing and Leicester City just couldn't contain them. Jordan Ayew scored in that game, and it wouldn't surprise me if Jamie Vardy's minutes were managed over the coming weeks. And you can find better value with Cunha, although I wouldn't invest in him right now, Chris Wood, Jackson, Isak, and amongst budget forwards, you could definitely make a case that Vardy is still one of the best options, but I'm not so sure if he's worth keeping because he's in and out of the team through injury. He's obviously 37 years old and he's not what he once was. He's still going strong for his age with 6 goals and 3 assists this season. If you want to keep him, I definitely wouldn't say it's a bad decision, but you can find better value elsewhere. Even Jean-Philippe Mateta as a short-term punt, and Crystal Palace have excellent fixtures in the long term. Dominic Solanke and even the likes of Kai Havertz could offer you real consistency from now until the very end of the campaign. So Jamie Vardy for me is a sell, but I have to say at his price and below, there aren't too many options who are going to offer you the same level of clinical finishing that Jamie Vardy does. If Kevin De Bruyne starts in fixtures like Leicester City away, West Ham at home, or Ipswich Town away, he could cause absolute damage and produce a double-digit haul in one of those matches, maybe even in 2 of them, but the minutes are too big of a problem at that price tag. I know the other options aren't great to replace Saka, so you could take a punt on a De Bruyne or Phil Foden, but I'd be more interested in the latter because at least he's starting week in, week out now, whilst De Bruyne didn't even get a single minute against Aston Villa when Man City were chasing the game, and he came on towards the very end against Everton, and he didn't look that great, but that quality of cross is always there. He showed it in the Manchester derby very recently, and he's got 2 goals and 3 assists in limited minutes this season. His XA is 3.38, which is very impressive considering the game time there, and 43 FPL points. His ownership is very low, so if you want that differential punt with the explosiveness, I think that De Bruyne or Son could work very well. But I also look at De Bruyne's minutes and I think I don't want to have that sort of headache week in, week out. But the next 4 fixtures look really enticing for Man City. Even Brentford away is good for their attackers like Haaland, De Bruyne and Phil Foden. But if you're asking me, I think De Bruyne starts 2 of the next 4, and at a push maybe 3 of them. But there are reports of a rift between him and the manager, Pep Guardiola. Something isn't quite right within that team with their recent results. 1 win in the last 13 matches across all competitions. No one expected this, and that goes to show you how quickly things change in football. But De Bruyne is one of the best Premier League players of all time, and if you want to take a cheeky punt, I don't think he's the worst pick in the world. Tottenham Hotspur are the definition of inconsistency, and that's epitomised by their club captain Heung-min Son, who is definitely capable of some big returns, but you're probably going to see 4 or 5 blanks preceding a double-digit haul, and he's going to be very frustrating more often than not. But Spurs do spread the goals around through Kulusevski, Maddison, Johnson, Solanke and Son, which is a positive thing, but their defending is terrible. Not just their actual defenders, but also the midfield, which is bypassed too easily. They're in dire need of a defensive midfielder, and Heung-min Son is going to be very, very underwhelming at that price in my opinion. But over the next 4 game weeks, could there be a double-digit haul? I think yes, and he did it last season against the likes of Everton, of course. He did it earlier this season at home, and against Arsenal away, he got a brace at the Emirates last time out. And Wolves is a promising fixture on paper, but with their manager bounce and also their recent record against Tottenham, that's not going to be easy. And Spurs have 7 wins in the Premier League and 9 losses. That's simply not good enough, and they're currently sitting in mid-table, and it's not looking too promising for them. But Son has some decent stats, like 12 big chance created, 5 goals and 6 assists, and 81 FPL points, but he can be benched as well from time to time. Not as often as De Bruyne. I don't think it's going to be that bad, but Son isn't going to be as good as a Saka, Palmer, or Salah this season. That's quite evident. But if you are looking for that short to medium term replacement for either Fernandes or Saka, I think Son has that explosiveness that you might be wanting, and I don't think there's a particular standout. Even Anthony Gordon, Ismail Assar, or one of those Liverpool attackers like Diaz or Jota, there are some pros and cons between every single pick. So that's why Son isn't going to be the worst option in the world to kind of invest in. But I think the likes of Maddison, Johnson, Kulusevski and Dominic Solanke offer better value in that Tottenham attack. That wraps up another Transfer Tips podcast for the season, this time out of Gameweek 19, and we're approaching the very end of the calendar year. Thank you very much for your support since the summer especially. It's been very much appreciated, and I hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. You can see the most transferred out players on screen. Saka, Fernandes, Haaland, Smith Rowe and Jackson are in the top 5. And refer to the beginning of this podcast where I showed you the most transferred in players at this point of the game week. And it's worth mentioning that this video is recorded on Friday, the 27th of December, before the 2 matches, Brentford versus Brighton and also Arsenal versus Ipswich Town. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this to the 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards 31,000 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. And there's a 20% discount on Patreon right now. And there's also the Discord server, FPL League, Draft Hound, as well as Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to support my channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Gameweek 19 and the rest of the season. And I'll see you next time.